Byzantines for beginners, ladies and gentlemen. So today I decided to record a little video for Byzantines because a lot of people are overwhelmed by the thought of Byzantines and they don't even know where to begin because Byzantines just has so many different mechanics. So today I want to break it down and make sure that you know how to play Byzantines. And I would say that this guide is pretty much fine until like low diamond. Then you should probably start looking at Valdemar's guides or Beastie's guides. They will break down the things that you already know that you don't need in this video. But for beginners and for people who are stuck in plat, stuck in gold, and want to learn a new civilization or even lower, this is the guide for you. Okay, so let's talk about where to place our buildings. So the first part of the game is always the most difficult one because people are like, hey, where do I put whatever? Especially with Byzantines where you have cisterns. Now, when you are choosing where to place your cistern, you're always going to place it where you are going to get gold in the inspiration, as well as your food source that you're currently gathering from. So that's going to be around here. So the moment you see this, you don't want to block too much with your cistern, but around here is a pretty good spot because it's going to include all of this. It might even include that first straggler tree if you decide to go for it. Now, that is probably the only thing you need to be thinking about this early in the game, except for obviously scouting and so on. So what we're going to be looking at now, first thing you can see I do is I grab my sheep, and we're going to play this a little bit slowly. I grab my sheep, I move it into position, and my scout goes forward. One of the villagers that were right-clicked onto sheep, you can see still holding food. I put the cistern down here. You can see the ring of inspiration. So I put it even further back because the gold is included here. So this cistern is going to make all the villagers in this circle work a little bit faster. So you're going to, while these villagers are on here, let's quickly also put them as the breakdown. You can see there are 5 villagers on food right now because one of them were moved over here. And the next ones are rallied on top of this. And I want you to notice the sheep. I'm moving the sheep constantly to get them into a better position while I'm clicking around with my scout. So you can see the scout, we're going straight, we're beelining here to try get to the middle, and then we decide which direction to go. But again, we're focusing on our base first. So now I'm just constantly rallying them on top here, and then I misclick. And that's what I wanted to include in this video. I want you to see this happens to people who are conqueror. This will happen to you, and this happens to me all the time. I double click the villagers for some reason, and they all go onto one sheep. You never want them all together from one sheep. You want to split them evenly. So when they go around and they drop off, it's a very quick drop off. They don't need to run around one another. They just go directly and drop it off here. And now that I have 7 on food, I rally the next 2 onto gold, while this one is still living his best life and building. The scout, on the other hand, we watch our scout the whole time. So I keybind my TC over here on number 4. And as I'm doing all these things, I just press number 2, number 4, number 2, number 4, so that I can see if my scout sees any sheep. So you can see I clicked him now, and now I'm rallying him this side. So I'm going to go and scout this side of the map now. So you can see exactly what my scouting pattern looks like. This is not the best scouting pattern for Dry Arabia, but it's the one I do the most. And I think it's the easiest because you can always just right-click your scout here, shift here, shift here, shift here. And as this is happening, you now see these villagers are being rallied onto gold. I get one of them that comes out to help and finish this mining camp. And that's the early game for Byzantines. So you're basically just letting your units do what they need to do. The scout doesn't go too greedy. And the reason he's doing this is because he's going to make it back to the base, drop off the sheep. And what we want to think about is we want to say, okay, once he's back at the base, we want to go towards our opponent's base instantly because your opponent is going to make units or he's going to go for a specific landmark. And I chose specifically English because I know in lower ranks, English is the most played. Now from here on out, by the way, back in the base, we have 8-3. So 8 villagers on food, 3 villagers on gold, like in most patterns that we go for. Now, after I have 8 on food, I usually just rally onto the wood. And because, again, this is a lower level guide, for higher level players, we would usually go for some straggler trees. But this one is going to go right over here. Now, remember what I said about the inspiration for the cistern, right? We want to inspire all our villagers to work extra hard. And this thing is not inside there. But this thing is going to be inside my second cistern. So your second cistern, the next one you're going to plop down, is going to give you the opportunity to inspire the berries and the woodline. So you're going to be perfectly fine. Now keep in mind, cisterns cost stone and they need to be connected, but Byzantines get stone for every building they construct. So you can see here, I have 82 stone right now. I need 100 to get that next cistern. And once this landmark finishes, I'll have enough, but you guys will see exactly what that looks like in a moment. With your grand winery, you don't really care about how it's placed next to the berries. What you care about is the future farms. So usually you want to place it 2 tiles from it, or like I did here, in line, because the berries were a little bit in the way. So this is fine. You can put it next to the berries. Just make sure that you have enough space for your farms a little bit later. So to recap, all the way until feudal age, what is important? Think about your first cistern. Where am I going to put it to get my food and to get my gold? Then you look for a good spot to find your second cistern. Think about it. Don't focus on it too hard. You guys see here, I'm scouting. Make sure that your scout is going a smaller route so that you can go to your opponent's base as they're aging up. Because the moment they age up, you need to know what they've aged up with. You need to have that information. And then once you have 8-3, you rally these guys onto wood and you age up with 4. So 4 is a pretty good number, especially for Byzantines. You want to leave 4 on food, you want to leave your 3 on gold, you don't move them around. And that's why I think Byzantines isn't that hard to play at low ranks, because you don't need to move these guys around too much. You'll see that these guys are going to move, but it's optional. It's good, but you're not going to lose the game because you didn't move them up. So now, into feudal age. As we're closing in on feudal age starting, my scout is here. I see he's aging up with 4 villages, which means it's pretty quick, but he's aging up with the king landmark, so I don't need to stress too much. The king takes a little bit of time to get out of the base and actually harass you. So I'm already thinking about what am I going to need for that? And the answer to that is going to be mercenary. So if you went for longbows, you probably want to go for horsemen, but in most cases, English will open with the king. At lower ranks, when they open with the council hall, just go for a horseman or 2. But you don't want to get into a position where you make your own horsemen. And when they do this, just get inside your TC so you can kill them. Do you see these villages I'm moving up? Because I want them to go to the berries. Because Byzantines, they get olive oil when they gather from the berries. So every time they drop off, these guys are going to drop a little bit of oil too. And you see this villager is instantly going and building that cistern. But I'm building this cistern. You can see my ducts are not connected. That's because I don't have enough stone for them. Every single time the building completes, I'm going to get more stone. Look at that. 8 extra stone. And now I'm going to be able to finish my duct. So these 2 cisterns will now be able to connect. And that's also why I'm building this barracks. Because earlier I mentioned mercenary. I want to make mercenary. And you can see I keep rallying onto wood. You want to keep rallying onto wood because you're going to slowly start with your farm transition. You need some production buildings. You're going to need a few houses. It's going to take a while, but you need to make sure that your split is correct. When you're in feudal age, you're at 8 on food, 3 on gold, and the rest are rallied onto wood. Now you can usually rally around 10, 11 onto wood, and then you can just rally the rest onto food and slowly add farms as you're going along. Now, me knowing he's gone for a king, I get a mercenary, and I ask myself, okay, where's the king going to attack? Now, this is a very vulnerable spot. This is a very vulnerable spot, and that's why I'm sending my scout out. My scout is important because he needs to go and spot the king. I need to find out where's that king, where is he going to harass me? So now with your scout, you're going to go run around and try to find it, and behind it, I keep producing mercenary. And I want you to look at my macro. Right now I have 300 wood. That's not good. And the moment I noticed this, I'm like, oh, I should just make stuff with it. And that's my advice to anyone. If you are not sure what to make, just make something. And in this case, I just made farms. You see, farms also give you a wonderful amount of stone. And I started building my mercenary house because now I'm getting close to, I'm now at 500 olive oil. So I wanted to see what units he's going for before I decide what units I'm going to be making. I saw that he has an archery range, so I don't want to get into a position where I make longbows, because he's always going to have more. Because he can make more archery ranges and he can make more longbows. And that's basically how you decide what contract you're going to get. So in this case, I'm going to go for javelin throwers because I can see here he has barracks as well. So Keshiks are just going to run into the spears. Now, I'm not good at microing Keshiks. I just lose them all the time. So I'm just going to go and make sure that I get the one for javelin throwers. Now, this is also a really good one because of the camel riders. With camel riders, you actually counter most civilizations that make horses. And if anyone knows how many horses there are in this game, we know English is now a knight civilization too sometimes. So you want to make sure that you get a unit that helps you into the late game. The other one is perfectly fine, but I wouldn't do it against English per se. If you're playing against English, it's usually quite scary to go Lunchknecht because they can usually give a good answer to them as well. So if you're playing against English, if you're really good with horses, do the Keshiks. But if you're like me and you run them into DCs and stuff, just use the javelin throwers. They're a lot easier. They're really good. They're very nice. So definitely a good unit to choose from here. Now, one thing I want you to notice as well. My upgrades are coming through. Forestry is not an upgrade you need. I misclicked that. But you can see I already have horticulture and double broadaxe. That's because I've been leaving these 3 on gold. And what you need to always tell yourself is, if I have gold, I need to spend it. And in this case, it will be getting double broadaxe, getting horticulture, the first level, and I get those first before wheelbarrow. Because wheelbarrow, I feel like, gets a lot more value the longer your villagers need to run. But right here, they're pretty close because wheelbarrow is about getting them to walk faster. And they have carry capacity. But when you get this, they just get better gathering rate. So in my opinion, I would rather get the wood upgrade and the horticulture upgrade and then the wheelbarrow. And you'll have enough gold for it. The timing works out perfectly for this. So now, let's go on. Now you see I put in a second barracks, and that's because I've now decided to go for javelin throwers. I only saw one of these. So I decided I'm going to go for a few more Limitenay, because Limitenay are very, very feisty. But if you see he's making a lot of longbows, you do not go for a second barracks. If he just goes for longbows, you have to get horses. But if he mixes in spearmen in between, it does get a little iffy. So now again, you see I have 107 gold. So now I have to ask myself, what am I going to do with that? And I think I took a long time in this game to actually notice I'm floating some gold. So what you ideally want to do in that scenario is you want to get a blacksmith, because now you already have all your upgrades. You have all your economic upgrades. You don't need to think about them anymore. So that gold that I'm gathering right now is going for purely upgrades. So as you can see, I'm moving my army out here because I'm trying to find where he is. I don't want to lose my units. So I'm like, oh, I moved out a little bit too far. Let me get all my units together. And this is what you guys need to remember. Don't send your units to die one by one. Make sure you get them as a group. You can raid with 2 different positions at the same time, but make sure that you are able to send them together. This is where I notice, oh, I have too much gold. It's time for me to get upgrades. And the moment I have the wood, I spend it and I build farms. You want to do the slow farm transition. So that is now early feudal. So just to recap, early feudal. What we want to focus on is go and scout what production buildings your opponent has. Make sure you get your upgrades instantly because you have enough on gold to sustain that. So you're going to get your double broadaxe that's over here, and you're going to get the... what is that thing called? Give me 1 second. Fertilization. Oh, no. That's the first one. Oh, I have no idea. The little act, or the little, what is that thing called? The scythe thing. Yes, get that one. Don't get the mining one. It's not great. We just leave that one as is. We get it a little bit later into the game because you don't need to get it this early on. You want to rather use your gold for these other upgrades. And then once they're done, you get wheelbarrow and you keep adding buildings. And as you can see, I have 10 on wood right now because one of them is building, but I always leave 11 on wood and slowly start my farm transition as much as I can. And yes, horticulture. Sorry, this one is called horticulture. Now, again, you don't see, I don't put any more on gold. Everything, I'm slowly adding production buildings. I keep scouting to try and see what's going on. And what to keep in mind with Byzantines is, look at my stone. I'm getting close to 150. And 150 is the next cistern. Now I want you to see here, the moment I hit 150, I forget to get another cistern. And this is a really good moment for you to be like, okay, I have 150, let me get a cistern. The first upgrade I get is iron undermesh. Now that is because I'm playing against a civilization that has longbows, and I've seen the longbows. And I want to make sure that my units don't die to this. Javelin throwers are already very, very beefy against longbows. But I would like to get that little bit of extra armor to make sure I do not lose units unnecessarily. And especially considering these are basically spearmen, you don't want them to take too much damage against those longbows. You want to make sure you micro them. Now, with the mercenary house now pumping out a few extra javelin throwers, we just want to get into position. But you see, these longbows are eating away at my scout. I'm bringing the javelin throwers forward to deal with these longbows, but I need to be careful, not for these guys to take any damage. So you can see the javelin throwers doing a little bit of work. These guys are just a little bit of extra support, but they are the ones who need to be doing the work. And you can even, like, if you were a little bit faster, like I wasn't, you could even move them a little bit forward and try to snipe a few villages earlier than I just did. So you can see now I put my scout into position so I have vision, and these guys are going to start eating away at them. Again, I'm scouting. I'm trying to see what he has. And right now I can see both of his production buildings, but I want to think about, can he add more? So you see I get this one to make sure I don't die to the range thing. And the next thing I get is siege engineering, because I just saw he doesn't have great units. And you can see here, I'm like, oh, he could actually make horses. Now, the moment I see him on stone, usually a normal player will be doing something with the stone, like getting a second TC. But in this case, this is a bot. We're not going to read too much into it. So I'm just trying to harass him on more than one point so that he gets distracted. Because I know now that I have siege engineering. And the moment I get to 200 wood, that is when I'm going to think about putting down a ram. Now, this is the big fight. You have to make sure that the king doesn't get on top of these javelin throwers. Now, luckily, this bot isn't very good at microing, but I would say that this is standard gold gameplay. So you would probably face this. The moment the man-at-arm comes forward, I'm just going to use the Limitinate to provide an extra level of protection. These guys need to be focus firing these longbows, and you can see now they're going to target fire the long... Ooh, no, I was a little bit lazy. So you can see if you're just A-moving your army, which means you select the army and you click A and you left-click, then they will just attack the closest thing to them. So you see I'm trying to move them back. I see the men-at-arms are coming too close. I'm just going to get them to help me. And again, I'm constantly sending my units here on this side to try and get his attention. This is very important in low ranks. If you can get your opponent to have to look in more than one place, you're going to win. Because in low leagues, people cannot split their attention. So that is something that is a really good way to think about the game. So now I just put these javelin throwers here to provide this heavy level of protection. And honestly, I'm taking too much damage on my Limitinate, but I want to get my rams out. And again, I need to target fire these. And now I'm target firing them again. And that is exactly what's happening. And behind this, I'm spending my gold. Every time I can. I got +1 for range. Now I'm getting +1 for melee. And behind it, these guys are now just in position. So when these guys pop out of these buildings, they're going to get some good damage on them. The first ram, we don't want to send it too far forward because it can take unnecessary damage. And usually I want to wait until I have 2 or 3 to push a little bit more sneakily. So with these javelin throwers, you really chunk the units. So they're really good and they have great ranged armor. So they're a very powerful unit to have here. So you can see now, I'm even going a little bit too deep and taking quite a bit of damage from the TC. But my rams are here. And these guys, they should follow with. But I actually decided, hey, we're going to get another ram. My belief is that you always get 3 rams for big pushes. And I was hoping to end the game right here. Because I can see he doesn't have a lot of units. I sniped a few villages. And as long as I keep spending all my resources, I'm going to do fine. But you can see here, I have 1,000 food. And that's when I realize, oh my goodness, I'm messing up. Because you're going to mess up too. You're going to be overwhelmed, and that's okay. But when you see that, you need to spend it. And that's just because I'm not constantly making Limitinate. I'm so focused on getting villagers to die that I completely forgot. And this is something that you're going to do too. Just be at peace with the fact that you're going to lose or that you're going to forget to macro. But the whole most important is keep making villagers. Just from constantly making villagers, you're already going to be ahead of most of your opponents. So you can see here with my 3 rams now, I'm just gonna dive all the way. I know I've killed so many villages. This is still risky though. You don't want to overcommit like I did here, but the whole point is to know, where do I push? You usually want to push them where the resources are that they're gonna need, like gold is a very important resource. The wood line for English is the most important resource. And I honestly like to push their production buildings because English is so wood hungry. And I know I've pushed him off of wood. The moment he's off of wood, he can't remake these. He's not going to make any more units. He's going to be pretty much stuck. So that's why I went for it. So this is just a bad push because I wanted to finish the game. But you always want to ask yourself, where am I going to do the most damage? And that is where his villages are and where his most important resources are. So if gold for if he's aging up or getting upgrades, and woodline if he's making longbows especially. And you can see here I realize these 2 rams are not enough. The 3rd ram here not focus firing properly. So I make a few more. But again, you just want to make sure that you're constantly putting this heavy level of pressure on your opponent. Okay, and that is the Byzantines guide. So make sure you make cisterns. You don't float 320 stone. Make that 3rd cistern because the bonuses are so good. You see the first one gives you 10% improved gather rate. Next one will give you 14, then 18. So I would put my next cistern probably over here or over here so it inspires the rest of these farms as well. Or I could put it over here so it inspires the wood line too. And you can see I'm idling villagers here. Okay, it's because I'm busy killing the guy, but you always want to keep an eye out on that as well. So just think about, do I have enough stone for a cistern? Let me put it down. Let me get that bonus. And that is Byzantines for beginners. There's a lot of words in there, but yeah. Oh yes, and another thing to think about is what is at the neutral market. You always want to click on the neutral market so you can see what mercenaries there are. But that's not Byzantines for beginners. That's Byzantines for intermediates. So there's usually some spicy units here at the market that you want to keep an eye out on. So they can have knights, they can have Sapahis, they can have Musafaris. There's a few units that they can have. And they're very nice to have. Even camel, what is the desert raiders? So you want to make sure that you get to a point where you can see these things. But even me, who literally, I'm Conk 1 and I never look at the market because I forget. And these are all small things that you can do to improve. But for now, focus on your cisterns and make units and make villages. There you go. So that's Byzantines for beginners. Thank you.